On a cold November night, Ryan Cole opened his door to a shivering stranger on his porch. He didn't know that decision would pull him into a relationship that made his 6-year-old daughter smile again, then rip it away in a single brutal evening. She vanished. The child waited, and he was left with a question no one could answer. When Maya Bennett returned 6 months later, soaking wet and desperate, did someone who had already abandoned them once deserve to be let back in? He stood in the doorway, hand on the knob, unable to move. Ryan Cole learned early that trust was expensive. He learned it the morning he woke up to find half the closet empty and a note on the kitchen counter that said, Diane couldn't do this anymore. Their daughter had been 2 years old. Emma didn't cry when her mother left because she didn't understand what leaving meant. Ryan cried later, alone in the garage with the door shut, and then he stopped crying and started working. Now Emma was 6, Ryan was 32. They lived in a rented house on the edge of town where the streetlights flickered and the neighbors kept to themselves. The house had 3 small bedrooms, a kitchen with tiles that never quite came clean, and a backyard where nothing grew except weeds. Ryan worked at a small auto shop during the day, and sometimes into the evening when someone needed their car before morning. Emma went to school, came home, did her homework at the kitchen table while Ryan made dinner. They had routines. Routines kept things predictable. Predictable meant safe. Emma didn't talk much about her mother. She had stopped asking where Diane went around the time she turned 4. Ryan never brought it up. He figured silence was kinder than explanations she wouldn't understand. But he noticed things. The way Emma drew pictures of families with only 2 people in them. The way she watched other kids get picked up by their mothers after school and looked away quickly. Ryan saw it all and didn't know how to fix it. So he made her favorite meals and read her stories before bed and hoped that would be enough. The night Maya showed up, it was raining hard enough to blur the streetlights. Ryan had just finished putting Emma to bed when he heard the knocking. It was past 10. He looked through the window first and saw a young woman standing on his porch, soaked through, arms wrapped around herself. Her hair was plastered to her face, and she was shaking. Ryan's first instinct was to ignore it. He had a kid asleep upstairs. He didn't know this person. But then he thought about Emma in that same position, stranded somewhere in the cold, with no one answering the door. He thought about it for 5 seconds. Then he opened the door. The woman said her name was Maya, and that she was sorry to bother him, but her phone was dead, and she didn't have anywhere else to go. She'd been left on the side of the road after an argument, and had walked until she found houses. Ryan didn't press for details. He told her she could sleep on the couch, and that he'd leave the porch light on in case she needed to leave during the night. She nodded and said she'd be gone by morning. But morning came and she was still there, folding the blanket he'd given her into a neat square. Ryan made coffee. Maya asked if there was anything she could do to help. He said she didn't need to. She did the dishes anyway. Then she wiped down the counters and straightened the chairs and moved through the kitchen like someone who needed to prove she wasn't a burden. Ryan watched from the doorway and wondered what kind of life taught a person to clean a stranger's house before breakfast. Emma came downstairs around 8. She stopped halfway when she saw Maya standing at the sink. Ryan introduced them quickly, keeping his tone casual. Maya smiled at Emma and said hello in a voice that was soft and careful. Emma didn't smile back. She climbed into her chair and stared at her cereal while Ryan made her lunch for school. When Ryan walked Emma to the bus stop, he half expected Maya to be gone by the time he got back, but she was still there, sitting on the couch with her hands folded in her lap. She asked if she could stay one more day, just until she figured out where to go next. Ryan didn't say yes right away. He thought about the risk. He thought about Emma. But he also thought about the look on Maya's face when she'd stood on his porch the night before. He said she could stay until she had a plan. She thanked him again. 1 day became 3. 3 became a week. Maya slept on the couch and cleaned the house and cooked meals that were better than anything Ryan had made in years. But Emma started noticing her, started watching her. One afternoon, Maya was sitting in the backyard with a sketchbook, drawing something Ryan couldn't see from the window. Emma went outside without being told to and stood a few feet away, quiet and curious. Maya looked up and smiled. She asked if Emma wanted to see. Emma nodded. Ryan watched from the kitchen. Maya showed Emma the drawing. A bird perched on a branch, simple but clean. Emma asked how Maya made the wings look like that. Maya handed her a pencil and said she'd show her. They sat together in the grass, and Maya taught Emma how to sketch feathers, how to add shadows. Emma didn't talk much, but she stayed. And when she came inside an hour later, she was holding a drawing of her own, a sky full of clouds and a rainbow that bent across the top of the page. Ryan looked at the drawing and then at Maya, who was standing in the doorway with dirt on her knees and a small, careful smile. He realized Emma hadn't smiled like that in months. He didn't say anything. He put the drawing on the fridge with a magnet and made dinner while Emma sat at the table and told him about the different kinds of clouds Maya had taught her. That night, after Emma was asleep, Ryan and Maya sat in the kitchen. The silence between them was different now, less wary. Maya asked him if he minded that she'd been drawing with Emma. Ryan said he didn't. She asked if Emma's mother was around. Ryan said no. Maya didn't push. Ryan asked her why she hadn't gone home yet. Maya took a long time to answer. She said her family had expectations she didn't know how to meet, that they'd planned her whole life out before she was old enough to have opinions about it, that she'd spent the last 4 years studying art at a private university because it was the only thing they'd let her choose, and even that came with conditions. She was supposed to graduate, get a respectable job, marry someone from the right kind of family. She said she didn't know how to be the person they wanted her to be. He told her about Diane, about waking up alone with a 2-year-old and no idea how to do any of it, about the fear that he was failing Emma every single day. Maya listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said she thought he was doing better than he believed. She said because Emma still smiled, because she still drew pictures, because she still felt safe enough to be curious. Ryan didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded, and they sat there in the small, warm kitchen while the rain started up again outside. Somewhere in that silence, something shifted. They stopped being a man who'd let a stranger in and a stranger who'd needed shelter. They started being two people who understood what it felt like to be afraid of failing the people they cared about. 3 weeks in, Maya was part of the house. She picked Emma up from school when Ryan had to work late. She made breakfast on weekends and folded laundry. Emma started calling her Miss Maya, then just Maya. She showed Maya her homework. She drew pictures of the 3 of them standing in front of the house, and Ryan found one tucked under a magnet on the fridge, a crayon drawing of a family that looked nothing like the one he'd planned, but somehow felt right. Ryan didn't mean to fall for her. He told himself it was gratitude. She was helping with Emma. She was kind. That was all. But then there was the night he came home late from the shop, covered in grease and exhausted, and found Maya waiting in the kitchen with a plate of food she'd kept warm. She handed him a towel and told him to wash up. When he came back, she was pouring coffee the way he liked it, black, no sugar. He asked how she knew. She said she'd been paying attention. They talked until past midnight. Maya told him she'd spent her whole life being told what she was supposed to want, and now she didn't know how to tell the difference between what she wanted and what she'd been taught to want. Ryan told her he understood, that he'd spent the last 4 years being terrified of making the wrong choice because every choice he made affected Emma. Maya looked at him and said maybe they were both too hard on themselves. He asked her if she regretted knocking on his door. She shook her head and said it was the first good decision she'd made in years. He believed her. And when she looked at him with those eyes that were steady and sad and full of something he couldn't name, He leaned forward and kissed her. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't desperate. It was slow and careful, like they were both afraid of breaking something fragile. When they pulled apart, Maya's hand was still on his arm, and his heart was doing something complicated in his chest. She asked if that was okay. He said yes. She smiled, and for the first time since she'd shown up on his porch, she looked like she wasn't running from anything. They didn't rush. They spent the next few days moving around each other carefully, testing the shape of this new thing between them. Ryan made sure Emma didn't notice. Maya made sure not to overstep. But the space between them had changed. They kissed again, and again. And it started to feel less like an accident, and more like something they'd both been waiting for without knowing it. One night, after Emma was asleep, they sat on the couch and talked about what this meant. Ryan said he had baggage, a kid, an ex-wife who'd walked out, a life that wasn't easy or comfortable or impressive. He asked Maya if she was sure she wanted to step into that. Maya said she didn't need easy. She didn't need impressive. She just needed a place where she could be herself without apologizing for it. She said she'd found that here, with him, with Emma. Ryan asked if she was sure. She kissed him instead of answering. They made it official without saying the words out loud. Maya moved her things from the couch to the small third bedroom that had been sitting empty. She started staying for dinner every night. She started being there when Emma woke up in the morning. It felt natural. It felt right. Ryan hadn't felt right in a long time. But then, nearly a month after Maya first knocked on his door, a black car pulled up in front of the house. Two people got out. A man in an expensive suit and a woman in a coat that probably cost more than Ryan's rent. They walked up to the door like they owned the place. Ryan opened it before they could knock. The man looked at him with cold, measuring eyes and said his name was David Bennett. The woman next to him was Ellen, and they were here for their daughter. David Bennett didn't ask to come inside. He stepped through the doorway like he'd already decided he had the right. Ellen followed, her heels clicking on the worn floorboards. Ryan stood his ground in the narrow hallway, blocking the path to the living room, where Maya had been helping Emma with a drawing just minutes before. David looked around the house with the kind of expression people wear when they're trying not to touch anything. His eyes moved over the peeling wallpaper, the scuffed baseboards, the stack of mail on the side table. Ellen's gaze landed on the kitchen, where dishes were drying in the rack, and a child's drawing was held to the fridge with a magnet. Ryan asked what they wanted. David said they wanted their daughter. Ellen's voice was softer when she spoke, almost apologetic, but the words came out the same. They said Maya had been missing for over a month. That they'd been looking everywhere, that they'd finally traced her here and needed to take her home. Ryan didn't move. He said Maya was an adult and could make her own decisions. David's jaw tightened. He said Ryan didn't understand the situation. Maya appeared in the doorway then, her face drained of color. Ellen crossed the room and pulled her daughter into an embrace that Maya didn't return. Ellen was crying. She said they'd been so worried, that they didn't know where she'd gone or if she was safe, that they just wanted her to come home. David didn't cry. He looked at Ryan with the kind of cold assessment that made it clear he'd already drawn his conclusions. He asked how long Maya had been staying here. Ryan said that wasn't his business. David said it absolutely was his business when a grown man took in a young woman without informing her family. Ryan's hands curled into fists at his sides, but he kept his voice level. He said Maya had needed help, and he'd provided it. That was all. David asked if that was really all. His tone suggested he didn't believe it. Ellen stepped back from Maya, still holding her daughter's hands, and said they needed to talk. Somewhere private. Maya's eyes darted to Ryan and then to the floor. She nodded. Ellen guided her toward the door, and Maya went, moving like someone in a dream. David lingered. He told Ryan this wasn't over. that he'd be looking into exactly what had happened here. Ryan said there was nothing to look into. David didn't respond. He just turned and walked out. The door closed. The house went silent. Emma came out of the living room holding the drawing she'd been working on. She asked where Maya went. Ryan told her Maya had to go home for a little while. Emma looked at the drawing in her hands, a picture of 3 people standing in front of a house with a tree in the yard. She asked if Maya was coming back. Ryan said he didn't know. That night, Ryan's phone buzzed with a message from a number he didn't recognize. It was Maya. She said she was sorry, that her parents had taken her phone, but she'd borrowed one from someone at the house. She said they wouldn't let her leave, that they were talking about sending her somewhere to recover from whatever they thought had happened to her. The message ended with a promise. She said she'd find a way back. Ryan read it 3 times and didn't know if he believed her. He tried calling the number, but no one answered. He sent a message back asking if she was okay. It was marked as read, but no response came. He stayed up until past 2 in the morning, staring at his phone and waiting for something that didn't arrive. The next day, Emma asked about Maya again, and the day after that, Ryan told her Maya was with her family and that sometimes people had to be where they were needed. Emma accepted this the way children accept things they don't understand, with silence and a sadness that showed up in the drawings she made. She stopped adding the 3rd person to her pictures. The houses she drew only had 2 people in them again. Ryan tried to reach Maya. He called the number she'd texted from, but it went straight to voicemail. He tried her old number and got the same result. He thought about going to her parents' house, but realized he didn't actually know where they lived. Maya had mentioned a neighborhood once, something with tall gates and streets named after trees, but that could have been anywhere in the city. He felt helpless in a way that made his chest tight. A week went by, then 2. Ryan threw himself into work, staying late at the shop and taking on extra jobs he didn't need. Anything to keep his hands busy and his mind from circling back to the same questions. Where was she? Was she okay? Had she meant what she said? Or had her parents convinced her that leaving was a mistake? Emma got quieter. She did her homework without being asked, and went to bed without protest, and stopped drawing altogether. Ryan noticed, but didn't know how to fix it. One night, she asked him if people always left. He said no. She asked why her mom left, why Maya left. He didn't have a good answer for that either. He just pulled her close and said sometimes people had to go even when they didn't want to. Emma didn't look convinced. 3 weeks after Maya's parents showed up, Ryan got a message from a number he didn't recognize. It wasn't Maya. It was someone who said they worked at the Bennett house and that Maya had asked them to pass along a message. The woman said Maya was sorry, that she'd tried to contact him, but her father had taken her phone and cut off her access to everything, that her parents were watching her constantly and she couldn't find a way out. The message said Maya wanted him to know she hadn't wanted to leave, that she'd fought as hard as she could, but that maybe it was better this way, that she didn't want to cause him or Emma more trouble. Ryan read the message sitting in his truck outside the shop. His hands shook. He typed out a response, asking how he could reach Maya, asking if there was any way to talk to her, asking if she was safe. The message was marked as delivered, but no reply came. He tried calling. The number didn't accept calls. He sat there in the dark parking lot with the phone in his hands and felt something break inside him. He wanted to fight. He wanted to drive to whatever mansion the Bennetts lived in and demand to see her. But he thought about what David had said, about looking into what had happened, about making it sound like Ryan had done something wrong. And he thought about Emma, asleep in her bed, trusting him to keep their life stable. He thought about what would happen if he pushed too hard and David decided to make things ugly. Lawyers, accusations, the kind of attention that could get social services involved, the kind of scrutiny that could take Emma away from him. So he didn't go. He sat in the truck and read the message again, and hated himself for not being brave enough to do something. Then he deleted it and drove home. Emma's teacher called him 2 weeks later. She said Emma had been acting withdrawn in class, that she wasn't participating the way she used to, that she'd been drawing pictures during lessons when she was supposed to be paying attention, and the pictures were all the same: a small figure standing alone under a dark sky. The teacher asked if something had happened at home. Ryan said there'd been a change in their household, but that they were managing. The teacher said to let her know if there was anything the school could do. Ryan thanked her and hung up, and felt like he was failing at the only job that mattered. He tried talking to Emma that night, asked her how she was feeling. Emma just shook her head and said she was fine. But she wasn't fine. He could see it in the way she picked at her dinner and stared at the empty chair where Maya used to sit. He could see it in the way she went to her room early and closed the door without saying goodnight. Ryan started sleeping badly. He'd lie awake replaying the night Maya's parents showed up, wondering if he could have said something different, done something different. He thought about the message she'd sent through the housekeeper. The one that said maybe it was better this way. He didn't believe that, but he also didn't know what he was supposed to do about it. 2 months after Maya left, an envelope arrived in the mail. It was from a law firm Ryan had never heard of. Inside was a letter on heavy paper with a letterhead that looked expensive. The letter was short. It informed Ryan that he was to cease all contact with Maya Bennett immediately, that any attempt to reach her, visit her, or communicate with her in any way would be considered harassment, that the Bennett family was prepared to pursue legal action if necessary. The letter didn't say what Maya wanted. It only said what her father had decided. Ryan read the letter twice and then put it in a drawer where Emma wouldn't find it. He didn't try to contact Maya after that, not because he didn't want to, but because he couldn't risk what fighting back might cost. He had a daughter who needed him, a job that barely covered rent, no savings to speak of, and no ability to go up against a family with the kind of money that hired law firms to send threatening letters. He was trapped, and he knew it. Emma asked about Maya less often as the weeks went on, but Ryan saw the question in her eyes every time she looked at the chair Maya used to sit in, every time she walked past the couch where Maya had slept that first night. The house felt emptier than it had before Maya arrived. It felt like they'd had something good, and then lost it. And now they were supposed to go back to normal, except normal didn't exist anymore. Ryan tried. He took Emma to the park on weekends. He helped her with her homework. He made sure she had clean clothes and hot meals and a bedtime routine that stayed consistent. But he felt like he was going through the motions. Emma needed more than routines. She needed to feel safe. And he didn't know how to give her that when he didn't feel safe himself. One night, Emma came downstairs after he'd put her to bed. She was holding the drawing she'd made of the three of them in front of the house. She asked him if Maya had left because of her. Ryan's heart broke. He knelt down and pulled her close and told her no. That Maya leaving had nothing to do with her. That sometimes adults made things complicated and kids got caught in the middle. But none of it was her fault. Emma cried into his shoulder. He held her and wished he had better answers. The drawing stopped after that. Emma put away her pencils and didn't pick them up again. Ryan tried to encourage her, but she just shook her head and said she didn't feel like it anymore. He didn't push. He figured she'd come back to it when she was ready. But weeks passed, and the sketchbook Maya had given her stayed closed on the shelf. Ryan fell into a routine that looked like life, but felt like waiting. He woke up, made breakfast, took Emma to school, went to work, picked Emma up, made dinner, helped with homework, put her to bed, sat alone in the kitchen and stared at his phone like it might ring even though he knew it wouldn't. He told himself this was better, that Maya was where she belonged, with people who could give her the kind of life she deserved. He told himself he'd done the right thing by letting her go. He didn't believe it, but he told himself anyway. 3 months in, he started to accept that she wasn't coming back, that the message from the housekeeper had been her way of saying goodbye, that whatever they'd had was over, and he needed to move on. He tried dating once, a woman from the shop who'd asked him out for coffee. They sat across from each other in a diner and talked about nothing important, and Ryan realized halfway through that he didn't want to be there. He wanted to be in his kitchen at midnight, talking to someone who understood what it felt like to be afraid of failing. He paid for the coffee and went home and didn't try again. Emma turned 7 in January. Ryan made her a cake and invited a few kids from her class. She smiled when they sang happy birthday, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. After everyone left, she sat on the couch with the drawing she'd made months ago, the one with 3 people in front of the house. She asked him if he thought Maya remembered her birthday. Ryan said he was sure she did. Emma folded the drawing carefully and put it away in her desk drawer. She didn't ask about Maya again after that. Ryan thought that was the end of it, that they'd learned to live with the empty space Maya had left behind. That time would smooth over the sharp edges until it just became part of their story. The woman who stayed for a while and then went back to her real life. He thought he'd made peace with it. Then, on a rainy night in late March, 6 months after Maya's parents had taken her away, someone knocked on the door. Ryan answered it without thinking, and there she was, soaked through, shaking, thinner than he remembered. Her hair was shorter and her eyes looked older, but it was her, Maya, standing on his porch the same way she had the first night, except this time when she looked at him, she didn't ask for shelter. She asked for forgiveness. Ryan didn't move. He stood in the doorway with his hand on the knob, staring at Maya like she might disappear if he blinked. She was soaked from the rain, her hair plastered to her face, her shoulders hunched against the cold. She looked exhausted. She looked like she'd been fighting a war and wasn't sure if she'd won. He didn't know what to say. 6 months ago, she'd left without a real goodbye. 6 months ago, he'd gotten a message saying it was better this way. 6 months ago, he'd decided to let her go because holding on would have put Emma at risk. And now she was here, standing on his porch like no time had passed at all. Maya spoke first. She said she was sorry, that she knew she didn't deserve to be here, that she'd tried to come back sooner, but it had taken time to get away. Her voice shook and Ryan realized she was crying, or maybe it was just the rain. He couldn't tell. He asked her what she wanted. It came out harsher than he meant it to. Maya flinched, but she didn't look away. She said she wanted to explain, that she owed him that much. Ryan's jaw tightened. He thought about Emma asleep upstairs, about the months she'd spent asking where Maya went, about the drawings she'd stopped making. He thought about the letter from the law firm and the threat it carried, and he thought about the fact that despite all of it, despite everything, he'd missed her. He stepped aside and let her in. They sat at the kitchen table the way they had all those months ago. Maya wrapped her hands around a mug of tea Ryan made without asking if she wanted it. She looked different, thinner, older. There were shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there before. She told him what had happened after her parents took her away, how they'd locked her in the house and taken her phone, how they'd monitored every move she made, convinced she'd been manipulated or worse, how they'd tried to set her up with the son of a business partner, a man she'd met twice and didn't like, how they'd threatened to cut her off completely if she didn't fall in line. She said she'd tried to fight back at first, that she'd screamed and argued and refused to cooperate, but her father had connections and her mother had tears. And between the two of them, they'd made her feel like leaving had been the selfish choice. She said she'd almost believed them, almost convinced herself that what she'd felt here wasn't real, that it was just desperation disguised as connection. But then she'd finished her degree. She'd done it online, late at night when her parents thought she was asleep. And the day she graduated, she'd packed a bag and walked out. She'd stayed with a friend for 2 weeks. Then she'd gotten a job at a small art studio that paid barely enough to cover rent. She'd worked for 4 months, saving everything she could. And then she'd come here. Ryan asked why. Maya looked at him with red-rimmed eyes and said because she couldn't stop thinking about him, about Emma, about the way it had felt to be part of something that wasn't performance or obligation. She said she knew she'd hurt them, that leaving had been the worst thing she could have done, but she also said she hadn't had a choice then, and now she did. Ryan wanted to believe her, but wanting wasn't enough. He asked her what happened when her parents came looking for her again, when they showed up with lawyers and threats and all the power that came with money. Maya said they wouldn't, that she'd made it clear she was done, that she'd refused their money and their help and every string that came attached. She said they could try to force her back, but she was 24 years old and legally free to make her own choices. Ryan asked if she was sure about that. She nodded, but he could see the fear underneath. He told her he couldn't do this again, that he couldn't let Emma get attached just to watch her leave. Maya's face crumpled, and she said she understood, that she didn't expect him to trust her, that she just wanted a chance to prove she meant it this time. Ryan asked how. She didn't have an answer. The next morning, Emma came downstairs and froze when she saw Maya sitting at the kitchen table. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Emma crossed the room slowly, her eyes locked on Maya. She stopped a few feet away and asked where Maya had been. Maya's voice broke when she answered. She said she'd had to go home, but that she was sorry she'd stayed away so long. Emma asked if she was leaving again. Maya said no. Emma asked if she promised. Maya looked at Ryan and then back at Emma and said she promised. Emma didn't smile. She just nodded and climbed into her chair for breakfast. Ryan watched the way she kept glancing at Maya, like she was afraid she'd vanish if she looked away too long. He made pancakes, and the three of them ate in near silence. It felt fragile. Over the next few days, Maya kept her distance. She rented a small apartment across town and got a job teaching art classes at a community center. She didn't ask to stay. She didn't push. She just showed up. She picked Emma up from school twice a week when Ryan had to work late. She helped with homework. She brought art supplies and sat with Emma in the backyard the way she had before, teaching her how to draw trees and animals and skies that looked like they went on forever. Emma started drawing again, slowly at first, just small sketches. But then she filled a whole page with a garden full of flowers and showed it to Maya with something close to pride. Maya told her it was beautiful. Emma asked if she could keep it. Maya said, of course. Emma folded it carefully and put it in her desk drawer next to the drawing of the three of them she'd made months ago. Ryan watched it all from a distance. He saw the way Maya showed up exactly when she said she would, the way she asked before doing anything, the way she was careful not to overstep. But he also saw the way Emma's face lit up when Maya arrived, the way she laughed again, and it scared him, because if Maya left again, it wouldn't just be him picking up the pieces, it would be Emma too. 3 months in, Emma got sick. It started as a fever and escalated fast. By midnight, she was burning up and barely coherent. Ryan called Maya without thinking. She arrived 20 minutes later and didn't ask questions. They drove to the hospital together with Emma bundled in the back seat. Maya stayed the whole night. She sat beside Emma's bed and held her hand and told her stories until the fever broke just before dawn. Ryan watched her from the chair by the window. He watched the way she stroked Emma's hair, the way she didn't complain or check her phone or act like she had anywhere else to be. And he realized something he'd been trying not to admit. She was here, not because she had to be, not because it was easy, but because she'd chosen to be. And that choice meant something. When Emma was released the next afternoon, Ryan asked Maya if she wanted to come over for dinner. She said yes. They ate together at the kitchen table, and Emma fell asleep on the couch halfway through a movie. Ryan carried her upstairs, and when he came back down, Maya was washing dishes. He stood in the doorway and watched her for a moment. Then he told her he was sorry for not trusting her. She turned and said she didn't blame him, that she had to earn it back. 2 weeks later, Ellen Bennett showed up at the community center where Maya worked. Maya saw her through the window and felt her stomach drop. But when Ellen came inside, she didn't look angry. She looked tired. She asked if they could talk. Maya agreed. They sat in the small office at the back of the building, and Ellen said she'd been wrong, that she and David had been so focused on protecting Maya that they'd stopped listening to what she actually wanted. She said she'd driven past Ryan's house a few days ago and seen Maya in the yard with Emma, both of them laughing over something Maya was drawing. She said she hadn't seen her daughter look that happy in years, maybe ever. Ellen asked if Maya was serious about this, about Ryan and his daughter, and the life that came with them. Maya said yes. Ellen nodded slowly and said she'd talk to David, that she couldn't promise he'd understand right away, but that she'd try. Maya thanked her. Ellen reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Then she left. David showed up a month later. He came to Ryan's house on a Saturday afternoon and asked to speak with him. Ryan stepped outside, and they stood on the porch in the cold. David didn't apologize, but he said he'd been unfair, that he'd made assumptions about Ryan that weren't based on anything except fear. He said he wanted his daughter to be happy, and if this was what made her happy, then he wouldn't stand in the way. Ryan didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. 6 months after Maya came back, she and Ryan got engaged. He proposed in the kitchen where they'd spent so many late nights talking. Emma was the one who brought the ring out, grinning wider than Ryan had seen in over a year. Maya said yes before he even finished asking. They got married the following spring in the backyard. It was small, just a few friends, and Emma, who stood between them holding a bouquet of wildflowers Maya had picked that morning. Ellen and David were there too, standing off to the side, but there nonetheless. Emma drew a picture that night. 3 people standing in front of a house with a tree and a sky full of stars. She gave it to Maya and said it was for her room. Maya hung it above her desk, and every time she looked at it, she thought about the night she'd knocked on a stranger's door in the rain, about the choice she'd made to stay, and the choice she'd made to come back. Family, she'd learned, wasn't something you were born into. It was something you built, one choice at a time.